My name's James Budd from KSS. We've been architects on No.1 with the tennis club since 2015. So during the period of construction, we've actually got through on site 3 championships. So one of the main challenges for No.1 Court has actually been the construction and then basically the removal of everything from site during the championship to actually allow the championship to operate, and then remobilising to actually allow the construction works to be delivered. So a large part of our work is not only to deliver a great design here for No.1, the Court 19, which is the plaza beneath us, and No.1 Court itself, but also something which could be delivered and also could actually allow the championships, which is obviously the fundamental part of Wimbledon, to operate during that time frame. I mean, as a project, No.1 is probably one of the most complicated BIM models I think we've actually ever worked on. It's an incredibly integrated three-dimensional matrix. I mean, looking at the roof behind you, it looks just like a roof, but behind that you have very extensive plant which actually creates the environment within the No.1 bowl, and that's basically predicated by a need to make sure that when the roof is closed, which is obviously a fundamental part of the No.1 project, that there is no impact both from an environmental point of view on the potential for condensation, but also that any wind speeds or any air speeds through ventilation has got to be absolute minimal so that it doesn't affect any ball movement. So within that roof, it's very, very complex. So the whole BIM modelling in terms of the structure, the architecture and the services has been a fundamental part of the successful delivery. Again, in parallel with the point I made earlier regarding the time frames and the delivery during championships, at each of those championships the plant also had to be largely operating, not for the moving roof so much, but a lot of the other spaces which were to be used or need to be used throughout those championships. Well, I think a large part of the look and feel of No.1 Court was really goes back to a master plan developed by Grimshaw's for the 2020 master plan for the whole of Wimbledon, which is tennis and English garden. So a large part of what we were looking at doing was actually using materials which actually works with that whole sort of design idea, which allows also through things like green walls, a permanent year-round, but very importantly, every championships there is an immense amount of overlay planting that the club actually install throughout buildings. So that was a major part, to have some permanent landscaping, to have sort of more overlay planting, but also a large part of the project was the creation, again just down below us here, of a whole new experience for spectators at Wimbledon. Originally this was Court 19, it was actually one of the main courts, but because there is not a huge amount of space around Wimbledon for spectators to either have somewhere to sit down or to buy food and beverage, we actually created as a major part of the No.1 Court project this whole new food court and cafe that actually works alongside. So again, the design is driven by tennis and English garden, so we have lodges and pergolas and a lot of planting, permanent planting, and brickwork which actually uses English wall bond, which is a traditional brick bond from the 18th, 17th centuries as part of the character of that space, to create this whole feeling of it's Wimbledon, it's tennis, but it's tennis in an English setting. Throughout the design process, and we actually took over the project around about the stage E stage, there was a continuous, virtually monthly, what's called a look and feel session with the chairman and other senior members of the board and the club, to actually talk about the colours and the materials and the palette and the approach. So everything from the cladding, the timber, it's actually timber lookalike cladding, to the roofing, all the colours, whether it should be a grey or it should be a green experience. We actually changed the whole design that we inherited to being a green experience rather than what's a dark grey, because again it was felt that the green was more about what Wimbledon is, and with that we actually work with the players. So when you're actually on the court at No.1, on No.1 Court, and you're looking up at this wonderful soffit of the roof, the feeling is you're part of Wimbledon, the dark green. And so we had a whole series of photo montages and other graphic devices to actually demonstrate the options. And I think a large part of what we do is to actually come up with options to give the club opportunities to choose which they'd like or how they'd like to tailor some of our suggestions.